Okay, let me ask you something. Have you ever had one of those gut feelings? You know, a flash of an idea that just felt completely right, only to just dismiss it because it didn't quite line up with what everyone else was saying? It's a universal struggle. I mean, we are just bombarded by opinions, trends, and the 24/7 noise of social media. It makes it incredibly difficult to hear, let alone trust, our own judgment. So how do we navigate all that? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're going to unpack one of the most powerful essays ever written on this topic, Ralph Waldo Emerson's Self-Reliance. And you'll see how his ideas from the 19th century are actually a radical, super practical guide for finding clarity in our very, very noisy modern world. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get super clear on what Emerson actually means by individual judgment. Then we're going to look at the biggest thing that gets in our way, what he called the crowd. After that, we'll talk about how to break free, and I'll leave you with one simple practice you can start using to build this skill for yourself.
So what is this self-reliance Emerson was talking about really? It's not about, going off to live alone on a mountaintop. No, it's about a radical shift, a shift in where you find your authority, from all that noise outside to the quiet sanctuary of your own mind.
At its absolute core, self-reliance is just that, a deep, foundational trust in your own intuition. It's this belief that your inner voice, that gut feeling, isn't random. It's actually your most reliable guide. For Emerson, this was the source of all real, authentic wisdom. Emerson uses this incredible metaphor here, comparing our authentic self to an iron string. Think about that. It's strong, it resonates, and it's uniquely ours. What he's telling us is that trusting ourselves isn't just some nice, fuzzy idea. It's about aligning with a fundamental, powerful part of who we are. And this kind of gets to the heart of why our intuition is so trustworthy. See, for Emerson, our innermost thoughts weren't just personal whims. He saw them as a gleam of light from what he called the original self. You could think of it as a kind of universal wisdom or a collective consciousness that connects all of us. So when you trust your own unique insight, you're actually tapping into something way deeper. Okay, but if trusting ourselves is so natural, then why is it so ridiculously hard to do? Well, Emerson gives a pretty blunt answer. Society itself. He doesn't see it as some neutral thing, but as an active conspiracy against our individuality. Now, I know that's a provocative line, but it really gets to the core of his argument. He saw society as this entity that actively demands we give up what makes us unique. That pressure you feel to fit in, it's not an accident. According to him, it's a conspiracy to make us all the same. Emerson had another amazing metaphor for society, a joint stock company. And think about it. It's kind of perfect, isn't it? In a company, all the members agreed to give up a little bit of their freedom for the security of the group, for their bread. It's this perfect contrast. The self-reliant individual is all about intuition and authenticity, but the company of society, it demands we trade that in for second-hand opinions and imitation. So here's the crucial point. For Emerson, becoming a mature, whole person, or using the language of his time, a man, it requires nonconformity. This isn't about being a rebel just for the sake of it. No, it's about having the courage to live by your own internal compass, even when it feels like the entire world is marching in the other direction. So how do we break free from this? Well, Emerson argues the real battle isn't with society out there, but with the fears society puts inside our own minds. And he had a fantastic name for these fears: hobgoblins. He points to three big ones. First, there's that simple, nagging fear of social displeasure. The fear that people just won't like us if we step out of line. Second, what he calls a foolish consistency. This terror of contradicting something we said or did in the past, which is a huge deal today, right? When everything's recorded online. And finally, that deep fear of being misunderstood, of just being seen as weird. Emerson saves his most famous line for that fear of being inconsistent. He saw this obsession with never contradicting ourselves as a total mental prison. A great soul, he argued, simply doesn't have time for it. Growth requires change, and change means you might think differently today than you did yesterday. Your truth, right now, is way more important than your past public image. And this is just such a powerful reframe. Emerson tells us not to fear being misunderstood, but to maybe even embrace it as a badge of honor. He points out that pretty much every great thinker in history, Socrates, Galileo, Newton, Jesus, they were all profoundly misunderstood in their time. It's often a sign that you're actually thinking for yourself. Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem, we've identified the mental barriers. Now for the practical part. How do we actually start listening to that inner voice? I've pulled together Emerson's advice into a simple little practice we can call the Clarity Reset. It's a really simple 3-step process. Step 1, find solitude. You have to intentionally create space away from the noise, away from the notifications and opinions, just to even have a chance of hearing yourself think. Step 2, hear your intuition. Listen for that gleam of light, and whatever you do, don't dismiss it just because it's yours. And then step 3, and this is crucial, act on it. Emerson says your genuine action will explain itself. You don't need to justify your authentic choices to the world. All right, let's do a quick recap of the big ideas. The most important takeaway here is that your intuition is your ultimate authority. Resisting society's pressure to conform isn't just about being a rebel. It's an absolute requirement for genuine growth. And remember, don't be afraid of being misunderstood. It might just mean you're onto something big. And finally, use solitude to reconnect with that inner voice and then act from that place of truth. I really want to leave you with this final thought from Emerson. It's such a powerful reminder that while we're out there looking for validation and security and peace from the outside world, the ultimate source for all of it is within. It's not in conforming or getting approval, but in the triumph of your own principles. And that brings us to our closing question for you to think about. Emerson pointed out that we often dismiss our own thoughts, only to hear some strangers say them later with authority. So my question is, what's one idea, one intuition, that you've been a little hesitant to fully trust in yourself?